Hello, Jacksonites. My apologies for not doing any videos for the last few days. I was just so swamped with work that YouTube wasn't really on my mind. But I figure I can still technically get out two videos a week, can I? By doing one on Friday and Saturday. Yes, I can. So, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome to my re-review of the very first movie that I reviewed on my channel a little over 2 years ago in a really, really shitty, very rushed, very disjointed, very poorly done review of one of my absolute favorite horror movies of all time. One that I didn't really think much of when I saw the trailers and I saw a couple clips on YouTube. I really wasn't all that intrigued, but it wasn't until Cecil from Good Bad Flicks decided to do an exploring video of this movie, and that is the real reason why I got interested in seeing this movie. It's because of Cecil from Good Bad Flicks. Hang on a second. Okay. And that is, of course, the 2012 supernatural horror movie, Sinister. Yes, indeed. The very first horror movie that I ever reviewed on this channel. So, that is pretty much my history with Sinister, is that I never really had much interest in seeing it when I would see the trailers for the film when it first came out. I was a little interested, but I really was not like jumping out of my seat to go see it in theaters. Honestly, I really don't remember much of the marketing for this movie. I remember seeing the trailer a few times on TV, but outside of that, I just don't think the film was marketed well. But apparently it turned out to be a very pleasant surprise, because the film had a budget of $3 million and its box office was $87.7 million, which is a pretty significant return in investment. So, and also, yes, as I said, Sinister is one of my absolute favorite horror movies of all time. I think I put it at number 3 or 2 on my top 15 favorite horror movies. Hey, Boss Gamer is here. I haven't seen you in a while. So, I really do like this movie quite a lot. I think it's one of the most unique horror movies to come out in the past 10 years or so. I think it's one of the best horror movies to come out in the last 10 to 15 years. And I really do consider this... I think this was the movie that kind of re-energized horror to be something good and not just to be cheaply made and shat out and just, you know, made to be pieces of shit. Even though this movie's sequel definitely kind of falls into that trap, this overall is still a very, very, very solid horror movie in my opinion. So, let's cut the bullshit of me rambling and let's get on to the review of the film, the proper review of this film. So, true crime writer named Ellison Oswalt, played by Ethan Hawke, which is a rarity because apparently Ethan Hawke does not like horror movies, moves into a home with his wife Tracy and their 12-year-old son Trevor and their 7-year-old daughter named Ashley. Ellison has moved his family into a home where a family was murdered, however, unbeknownst to his family, where they are all hanged by ropes on a tree in the backyard. And this is the first scene that we see in the film. I'll elaborate on that a little later. Ellison intends to use this case of a murdered family as the basis for a new novel he plans to write, in hopes that his research will reveal the fate of this family, the Stevensons' fifth member, a 10-year-old girl named Stephanie who disappeared following the murders, and finally give some justice for this case and get it kind of solved. And later that night, Ellison discovers his son, half naked, Trevor, in a box having a night terror, which is essentially a nightmare, but it's just on super steroids. Sorry I'm shaking so much. I'm trying to position my camera in a good way. Anyway, so Ellison finds a box in the house's attic that contains a projector and several reels of Super 8mm footage that seem to be labeled as innocent home movies. And actually, let me see if I can find the names of these. No, I don't think I can. Shit. Oh, maybe I can find... Okay, hang on. 1 second. Okay, here we are. There's Family Hanging Out, 11. Barbecue, 79. Pool Party, 66. Sleepy Time, 98. And Lawn Work, 86. They're all seemingly innocently named home movies, but in fact, they are actually snuff films of the murdered families. By an unseen person holding a Super 8mm camera. And Ellison notes the appearance of some type of mysterious symbol in the films, as well as a strange masked figure. Consulting a local deputy, whom Ellison gives the nickname Deputy So-and-so, they discovered that the murders took place at different times, beginning in the 60s, which is the oldest case in the film, and in different cities across the country. The most recent being Family Hanging Out, 11, which took place in 2011, only a year before the events of this film. Seemingly. I mean, you can assume that this movie does take place in 2012. He also learns that a child from each family went missing right after each murder. The deputy refers Ellison to Professor Jonas, played by... what's his name? Vincent D'Onofrio, who is an expertise in the occult, to decipher the symbol in each of the films. Jonas tells Ellison that such symbols are that of a deity from Babylonian mythology named Bughuul, Bughuul, who would murder entire families and then take one of their children in order to consume his or her soul. And one night, Ellison hears the sound of the film projector that he uses running, and he finds the missing children sealed in the attic watching one of the films. Bughuul suddenly appears on the camera before physically appearing before Ellison, which causes him to fall off the attic ladder. Ellison takes the camera, projector, and the movies outside and burns them with petrol. His wife meets him outside and he tells her that they're moving back to their old house immediately. And at his old mansion, Ellison receives a video message from Professor Jonas, who sends him scans of historical images throughout time associated with Bughuul, including the symbols seen in the murder movies. In early Christianity, believed that images of Bughuul served as a gateway for Bughuul himself to come from the spiritual realm into the mortal realm. And children who come in contact with these images can be possessed. And apparently they're very easily possessed. But it's only one child for each family. Elsa discovers the unharmed projector and the remaining films in the attic, exactly as he did in the new house, along with an envelope of little strips of film labeled extended cut endings. Deputy So-and-so calls and informs him that every murdered family throughout time had previously lived in the house where the last murder took place, and each new murder occurred shortly after the family moved from the crime scene to their new residence. And by doing what he just did, Ellison has placed himself and his family next in line to be slaughtered. The extra footage depicts the missing kids themselves coming on screen following each murder, revealing themselves to be the ones who in fact killed their families, before suddenly disappearing right after doing this and then running off, seemingly to be consumed by Bagul. Ellison becomes lightheaded, and he notices a bright green liquid mixed in with his coffee in a cup, along with a note reading "Good night, Daddy" under the cup before he falls into unconsciousness. Ellison awakens groggily to find himself, Tracy, and Trevor bound and gagged on the floor, laying on plastic. Ashley, under the possession of Bagul, approaches them, filming them with the 8mm camera, and murders them all on camera with an axe by decapitating them all. Ashley then views the film of her murders while drawing the murder on the lid of the box with the whole movies, and the missing children stare at her through the camera. However, they flee when Bagul appears. He takes Ashley into his arms and teleports into the movie with her, and the box of films is seen sitting in the Oswalt family's attic, now accompanied by Ashley's reel labeled House Painting 12, thus ending the film. So how about this plot? Well, overall it's a really solid plot. It's a very, very, very original story. Well, you can definitely tell it's inspired by a couple other films. I do get a bit of an Exorcist vibe from this movie. I do get sort of a haunted house type vibe from this movie. However, you can't really say that there's any movies out there that actually used an ancient pagan deity as the film's antagonist. Or maybe there has, I'm just not aware of them. But overall, I really do think that this movie's plot is really, really solid. Well thought out. Has an overall bleak and grim tone. That's actually one of the pros for this film, despite me not liking this film's type of ending. I'll get to that momentarily. But overall, Sinister, I think, is a very solid movie. So let's get to the pros. I'm going to keep the same pros that I had originally when I first reviewed this film, but I am just going to elaborate on them more because I have more time to do that. So, overall, pro number one is that this movie is very, very well paced. It is a bit of a slower burn, and I have stated before that I don't like slow burn horror movies. I think that, I don't want to sound like somebody... Actually, no, I really don't care about that. I like a movie where, a lot of stuff happens. I like movies that have consecutive bits of action happening one after the other. Horror movies included. However, I also don't mind a slow burn when it's executed well. And in this case, I think this is one of the greatest cases of a slow burn working for me. Because it's not exactly like a true slow burn, but it is much slower. Like this isn't a slasher movie where oftentimes in slasher movies the pacing is too quick. Here the pacing is very, very cinematic. Because not only is this a horror movie, it also is a murder mystery film. And murder mystery plots often do have a slow pace. And when you mix that with a horror movie, like say say something like Silence of the Lambs. That movie does have a slower pace as well. Sorry. Silence of the Lambs itself does also have a slower pace. But it works to that advantage because it's also, not only is it a horror movie, it's also it's a crime film and it's a murder mystery film. Murder mystery movies often have a slower pace in order to let the audience try to figure out the murder itself along with the main characters. We're right beside Ellis and Oswald trying to figure out what went wrong in this house and how these murders were occurred, or how these murders were executed, and just exactly what happened. And for this type of film, it works. It's actually executed in a very original way, too. The dude basically has to watch snuff films, and snuff films are never easy to watch. So, overall, this movie's pace is very, very well executed. It's slower when it needs to be, and it builds tension, and it builds anxiety throughout the movie. Like, you feel like you're being watched. It's a little faster paced toward the end. However, I think the faster pace and the tight editing makes you feel anxious. It makes you feel like you're in a bit of a panic yourself. But I'm delving into the scares, but I'll get to that momentarily. But overall, the pacing is very, very well done. It's slower when it needs to be to build tension, but also when it's fast, it also builds tension that way as well, which is excellent. Horror movies that have a pace like this really get my blood going, and this movie certainly gets my blood going. The next pro that I have is the special effects are overall very, very well done. Even though they're very, very minimalist. They're very, very, very minimalistic. There's not that much blood in the film. In fact, there's probably hardly any blood in this movie. If there is, you only see it. You see it in the snuff films, but you see it in, Ellis and Oswald's the reflection of his glasses when he's looking at, he's watching the films. You can see the reflection of the movie playing in his eyeglasses. But you never get a clear look at the violence. It just leaves a lot of it to your imagination, which again, I'll get to that when I get to the scares. But, oh, sorry. Let's see. Where was I? Oh, yeah. The special effects for Bagul, very original, very well done. It was all practical, at least from what I could see. You don't really see Bagul that much in this film. In fact, if you round it up, I would say he maybe, in this movie, it's fairly long. It's 109 minutes long, an hour and 49 minutes. He's maybe on screen for 4 minutes at the most. You don't really see him, yet you also feel his presence throughout the house. But the makeup used for his face, it's very unsettling. He has long, really messy, unkept hair that looks like it's wet, but it's also dry and craggly at the same time. He has no mouth, which it's just all makeup to obscure his mouth. He has 2 dark nose holes, and he has almost like Venom's Spider-Man eyes, but they're really ashy and they're really they don't look like eyes. They look like the empty eye sockets of a skull, which gives Bagul a very, very unsettling look. He doesn't speak either, but he didn't need to speak. If Bagul spoke, I think it kind of would have ruined his character, but that's just me. And he has a very threatening presence. But so overall, the makeup done for Bagul is very, very solid. Again, very minimalistic, but again, that's not a bad thing in this case. And also, the special effects done for the zombie ghost kids, well, I still think it could have been done a little better because they used some CGI to make them look a little more decayed, which I thought made them look a little too cartoony-ish. It's not terribly done. It's shot at night and in the shadows, so it does hide a lot of the cartooniness. And in some shots, you can hardly tell at all. So props to them. But overall, and also the gore effects, again, what little of them there are, they're really well done as well. But overall, the special effects are very, very well executed. Um, the characters in this movie are really good. There's not really much to say about the rest of the supporting cast, so I'll just talk about the three main ones. And that is Ellison Oswald, Deputy So and So, and I'll kind of get into Bagul as well, but I'll get to that actually when I get to the scares. So I'll just talk about Oswald and Deputy So and So, but I'll get to the rest of the cast as well. Tracy Oswald, played by Juliette Rylas, she actually is sort of one of my cons for this movie, but now that I really think about it, she's also not. Um, but there's many scenes where it's a little annoying that the way that she speaks is like she's constantly trying to be a buzzkill to Oswald's dream to make it big one more time to support his family. It's a little frustrating to watch her just shit on his dreams all the time. However, towards the end of the movie, you come to realize that she's actually the voice of reason in this case. And she's the logical one for once in this case. Ellison is so blind by his desire to win it big again that he's clearly ignoring signs that something's going on and it's not good at all. And while she doesn't see anything that he sees, she sees him act the way that he is throughout the film, and she's thinking, okay, something's not right here. We should probably leave. Unfortunately, leaving is the thing that causes their demise, but I digress. And overall, she does a really good job. She's a good actress. She delivers some really solid lines, though again, there are some scenes where she's a little annoying, but towards the end of the movie, you come to realize that the annoyingness of her actually makes sense because she's the voice of reason. She's the logical one. And the rest of the cast, like the kids who play Ellison's kids, Claire Foley, who plays Ashley, she's a stereotypical innocent little girl who, unbeknownst to the parents, becomes a possessed little psycho. And Michael Hall Diodario, I think that's how you pronounce it, as Trevor. He does a good job too. The movie kind of makes it seem like he's the red herring of the film, where he's the one who's possessed, when it turns out he's not. He's just having recurring night terrors. And Vincent D'Onofrio, he's in 2 scenes only as Professor Jonas. He does a good job as well. But the real star of this movie is Ethan Hawke as Ellison Oswald. He's not your standard he's not your standard horror movie character. I can't really think of too many horror movies off the top of my head where the main character is a true crime author. True crime writing, I can totally understand. It's kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those genres that just kind of at times is given the stink eye, because it just kind of seems like these authors are exploiting the deaths of others in order to make money. And he himself is certainly accused of doing that in this movie, which is unfortunate, because in many, many, many true crime author cases, the true crime authors themselves, they're genuinely trying to bring some justice to the potential families of people who were murdered, or to just solve an unsolved case, and they're trying to close it, to give the people who were unfortunately murdered some closure, and just try to wrap up a case in order to make them rest at peace. And he is like that, but he also has a couple of those, I'm kind of doing this for the money. The money is really nice, not going to lie, but I also am doing it for the justice, and also just to solve murders type of thing. So he's both sides of the same coin. He is doing it for justice, but he also really enjoys the money that he gets out of it. But he is also a sympathetic guy because he's trying to support his family, which is a very admirable thing to do. And also, I gotta hand it to him that he does seem like he'd be a genuinely good detective. Certainly, I mean, he could totally work for the FBI as far as I'm concerned. If you see the setup that he has in his office when he's working, I mean, he has giant easels where he pins up a map of the city. He has photos all over the place, pieces of string to connect different pieces of evidence. I mean, he looks like somebody who works for the FBI, and it's Ethan Hawke does an excellent job of portraying this character. I totally bought him as an actual true crime author. Overall, I'm not the biggest Ethan Hawke fan. I mean, he's a good actor, but a lot of movies that he's in are just not my cup of tea. But I will say this, in this movie, he's very solid. I think it's actually one of his most underrated performances, in my opinion. So overall, the characters are really good. Oh, wait, I forgot the guy who plays Deputy So-and-so. Let's see, what's his name? James Ransone, I think that's how you pronounce it, as Deputy So-and-so. He's a really solid character in this movie. Even though you don't see that much of him. In fact, I think he's executed much better in the second Sinister film, but I'll talk about that in a few days. Here, he's kind of a geeky shut-in, but he also seems like he's a bit of a rookie cop, but just not exactly. He seems like an intelligent man, but he's also a little shy. He plays the starstruck fan very well, in my opinion. But he also executes the smart detective very well as well. Overall, James Ransone, I don't really have that much to say about him as Deputy So-and-so in this movie, other than he's good. He's just a lot better in the second movie, and I have a lot more to say about him in the second movie when I get around to it. So, overall, the cast is very, very solid. Very minimalist, which is a good thing. Pro number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, is that the scares in this movie are excellent. Absolutely excellent. This is not a jump scare movie. It has jump scares in it, yes, but they're few and far between, and they're well earned, except for the last jump scare, but I'll get to that momentarily. The scares in this movie are really, really solid. This movie is all about building tension. It makes you feel like you're being watched. It makes you feel like you're being stalked. It does an excellent job of making you feel very uneasy and very claustrophobic at times, and you just feel creeped the fuck out when you watch this film at times. One thing that I think is absolutely genius is that when the first thing that they shot when making Sinister were the Super 8 films, which in itself I think is brilliant, but when they brought Ethan Hawke on, and Ellison Oswald himself was watching these snuff films for the first time, they were actually filming Ethan Hawke's real reactions to seeing these movies for the first time. And they used those clips in the film so that his reactions would be genuine. Which I think is genius. Absolute genius. It's very hard to fake being scared, in my opinion. Sometimes you overdo it. Sometimes you underdo it to the point where it's noticeable that, yeah, this guy's seen this type of thing before. And if you overdo it, it just kind of seems like it's over the top to the point where it's being funny. Unintentionally funny. Ethan Hawke's reactions to seeing these snuff films, they're not what you may expect. The only time where he ever jumps is, let's see, I think it was Yard Work 98, where in that film somebody gets their head run over by a lawnmower. That's the only one where Ethan Hawke actually jumps out of his seat. Which that was genius. That was pure gold reaction to seeing something like that, because not only did we see a shocking image that we did not expect to see, the music also lent itself well. And this is another thing. I probably should have said this in my original review, but I'll say it now. Another pro that this movie has is its soundtrack. It's a very strange soundtrack. It's at times it sounds disjointed, but I think it's intentionally just disjointed. But the best tracks in the film are the miniature soundtracks for each of the snuff films. They range from unsettling to genuinely unnerving. The one that, in my opinion, is the most genuinely unnerving is the one that plays. Let's see. What? I gotta look it up again. I'm not gonna play it. I'd like to, but I don't want to get a copyright strike. Whoops. It's Barbecue 79, titled Silence Teaches You How. It's a short looping soundtrack, but the way that it's just executed, it's very unnerving. It sends shivers up my spine whenever I hear it. And the soundtrack that plays during, let's see, what was it? Sleepy Time 98. Or no, that's not it. That's the one people get burned. That's Family Hanging Out. Lawn Work 86. That's the one where people get their head run over by a lawnmower. The music played during that is a very loud. It's almost like a distorted scream that just completely comes out of nowhere. It's kind of a low little music cue, but when you see someone's head about to get run over by a lawnmower, the music just explodes into a loud music piece, and it just knocks you off your ass. Utterly knocks you off your ass when you see it. You don't even see the lawnmower go over the person's head. You see the Super 8 camera mounted on a push lawnmower, and you see it get pushed along for a couple seconds, and then right out of nowhere you see someone's head, and that's when the music piece plays. Then it cuts to Oswald's reaction when he throws his clipboard at the projector, and he just that's his reaction. And if I ever make a horror movie and I make something like Sinister, that is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to shoot the snuff films first. Not going to be actual snuff films, but you know what I mean. But and for my main actor who's going to be seeing them, they're not going to be seeing them until we're ready to shoot. Stroke of brilliance. And also just the build of tension throughout the film is very, very solid. There's a couple scenes where Ellison is walking throughout his house with a baseball bat, and he's looking around to see if there's anything in there, and the house is heavily misted in shadow, and you never know if someone's going to pop out of these shadows. The second time it happens, you see the ghost kids running around. And the way that was shot was brilliant too. They shot it twice. Once with Ethan Hawke walking about with his bat, and then a second time with the kids running about. They slowed down the kids running about to make it look like they were moving in sort of semi-slow motion, and they disappear right as they're about to be in Ethan Hawke's line of vision, and they just combined the two pieces to make it look like it was all one thing. That was brilliant too. And overall, the jump scares throughout the movie, they come at a moment where you least expect them. And those are the best kind of jump scares, too, because they also leave a lasting impression on you. They're the type of jump scare that it startles you at first, but then you get the sinking feeling that, oh God, something bad is going to happen. Those are the best type of jump scares. They're the ones that leave a lasting impression. They're not like, say, a Paranormal Activity case where there's a long shot of a place where nothing's happening, like this. And then a cat comes out of nowhere and scares the shit out of you, leaving you going, wait, that's the cat! Come on, man! Apologies to anybody who actually was scared during that. Anyway, overall, the scares in this movie, they're really fucking good. And even though I did kind of spoil this movie for myself for a few scenes, the jump scares that I did not see, I almost pissed myself a couple of times watching this movie. And also the last pro that I have, which I guess could be pro number 6 because I mentioned the soundtrack, is the ending. Well, I have said before, I don't like movies that have endings where all the characters die, because I just feel like I wasted my time getting invested with this movie to just have these characters that I care about die. So the movie itself doesn't really have any rewatchability. In fact, some movies where the characters die, I feel like you can only watch them once. Like Star Wars Rogue One, for example. However, with this movie, I think it's one of very, 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 very few exceptions that this film has an ending where nothing happens whatsoever. Or not nothing happens. Why did I say that? Where nobody survives whatsoever. Everyone ends up either dead or taken by Bagul. Except Deputy So-and-so. But again, we'll get to him in the second film. The ending just has an overall bleak outlook. And it leaves you feeling, what the fuck? It leaves you feeling creeped out. Which, again, kind of ties into the movie scares. However, I feel that it is slightly tarnished by the final jump scare at the end. I don't have that much of an issue with it, like nearly as much as Cecil from Good Bag Flicks does, because it's kind of a double-edged sword where it does relieve the tension that you felt because you just watched something so fucked up and so just so tense and scary, and you're just like, if the film had cut to black when it focused on its shot of the box of home movies and then just cut to black, that would have been a good ending, yes. But the Bagul jump scare surprises you and it relieves you of all the tension, which is both a good and bad thing. Some people can't handle that type of stuff. Some people can, and some people like that because some people like the idea of a movie ending like that and just leaves you feeling, what the fuck? And it leaves you with that sense of tension. Me, I'm kind of a little bit of both. Well, I do like a good jump scare. I also sometimes like an ambiguously freaky-ass tension-filled ending. And this movie kind of tries to do both, but it just doesn't quite do it. But overall, the ending to this movie is very good. So, I kind of did address Ellison's wife as a con, because in my original review, this movie's cons, all there was Ellison's wife. However, I kind of can't say she is a con now that I have had some time to watch the movie a couple more times and research her character. So I really don't have any other cons with this film. It's pretty fucking solid. It's an excellent horror film. It's got great characters, an original premise, great scares. Overall, if you have not seen Sinister and you want something that's more of a modern horror movie that's actually good, and not a piece of shit like Wish Upon or XX or The Bye Bye Man, check out Sinister. It's a really solid piece. And I'm going to give it the same rating that I gave it in my original review. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Very solid horror movie. I highly recommend it. So post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. If you enjoyed my re-review of Sinister, I really hope you did. I had a lot of fun doing it. And now I feel like I've actually done this movie some justice. And not in just some rushed, disjointed piece of shit review. Which that will be deleted within the next few days. Sorry. It's terrible. We can all agree that's terrible. So I will see you in the next video of a review of the first Lethal Weapon movie. Which, by the way, I do now own the first season of the rebooted TV series. Can't deny I'm really enjoying it. So anyway, go out there, solve some murders, but don't reawaken a Babylonian pagan deity, would you please? It's just not going to end well for you. And I will see you in the next video.